You probably know that friend who always cancels plans. They're tired again, not feeling great again, maybe next time. At first, it seems harmless, but over time, people start to tell a story about them. They're unreliable, they don't try hard enough, they must not care. What most people never stop to consider is that this behavior is rarely about avoidance. More often, it's about protection. That friend usually isn't pulling away from people, they're pulling themselves back from exhaustion. They're protecting their energy, their focus, and sometimes their emotional balance. If you're someone who genuinely feels more excited about a quiet Friday night at home than a crowded Friday night out, you're not alone. In fact, for many people, that choice doesn't feel like giving something up. It feels like relief. If that sounds familiar, you're probably about to feel very seen. Today, we're talking about the psychology of people who love staying at home, the ones society is quick to label as boring, antisocial, or unmotivated, but science understands in a very different way. Because when you look beneath the surface, this preference isn't about personality flaws, it's about how people experience and manage energy. Not motivation, not discipline, energy. Extroverts often recharge by being around other people. Conversation, movement, shared experiences, and external stimulation actually give them energy. Being alone for too long can leave them feeling restless or drained. For introverts, and for many people who naturally prefer solitude, the process works in the opposite direction. Every social interaction, even an enjoyable one, requires energy. Talking, responding, reading social cues, and staying engaged all place demands on the nervous system. This doesn't mean they dislike people or struggle socially. It simply means their nervous system processes stimulation more intensely. Over time, even positive interactions slowly lower their energy levels. Eventually, they reach a point where continuing to socialize doesn't feel connecting anymore. It feels tiring. That's usually when home stops being just a place and becomes something more important. It becomes the one environment where their system can finally slow down and reset. Psychologists explain this preference using something known as optimal arousal theory. In simple terms, it means that people have different comfort levels when it comes to stimulation. Some individuals naturally feel best when their environment is full of sound, movement, conversation, and activity. Others feel most balanced when things are quieter, slower, and more predictable. Neither is better or worse, they're simply different ways the nervous system seeks balance. When stimulation goes beyond what a person's nervous system can comfortably handle, it stops feeling exciting and starts feeling draining. What might feel energizing to one person can feel overwhelming to another. In those moments, choosing to stay home isn't about laziness, fear, or lack of ambition. It's an act of self-regulation. It's the nervous system asking for less input so it can return to a calm, stable state. There's also another important factor involved, one that often goes unnoticed: control. The outside world is filled with unpredictability. Loud environments, sudden changes of plans, crowded spaces, surface-level conversations, and unspoken social expectations all require constant mental effort. Even small interactions demand attention, adjustment, and emotional awareness. Over time, that effort adds up. At home, that pressure eases. The environment becomes predictable and adjustable. You control the lighting, the sounds, the pace of the day, and how much interaction you allow in. You can sit in silence, move slowly, or simply exist without having to perform or respond. For people who are highly sensitive or prone to anxiety, that sense of control isn't a luxury or a preference. It's what allows their nervous system to feel safe and calm. Many people assume that staying home means being inactive or unproductive, but research suggests the opposite. People who genuinely enjoy solitude often show higher levels of creativity, introspection, and problem solving, not because they're more intelligent, but because their minds finally have room to wander without interruption. Without constant external input, thoughts can deepen, connections can form, and ideas can develop naturally. Creative insights rarely appear in loud, crowded environments. They tend to surface in quiet moments, during slow mornings, calm evenings, or late at night when there's nothing competing for attention. In those moments of stillness, the mind isn't distracted. It's processing, exploring, and creating in ways that busy environments rarely allow. Despite all of this, quiet lifestyles are rarely celebrated. Modern culture tends to admire visibility, constant movement, and being endlessly busy. We often associate a meaningful life with being seen, being invited, and being everywhere at once. Social media amplifies this idea even more by presenting parties, travel, and nonstop activity as the ultimate signs of happiness and success. Over time, it creates the impression that a full life has to be loud and externally impressive. But for many people, a good life looks much softer than that. It's slower, calmer, and more private. It might be a documentary watched without distraction, a warm meal eaten in peace, or an evening with no plans and no expectations. For those people, these moments don't feel empty or lonely. They feel grounding. They offer rest, clarity, and a sense of being at ease with oneself. That isn't sadness or avoidance, it's self-awareness, an understanding of what actually brings balance rather than what simply looks good from the outside. At the same time, it's important to make an honest distinction. Not everyone who stays home does so because it feels nourishing or restorative. For some people, staying home is closely connected to social anxiety, past emotional pain, or depression that quietly drains motivation and hope. In those situations, the decision to stay home isn't always a choice. It can feel like the only option that requires less emotional effort. When this happens, home can become both a refuge and a limitation. It feels safe, predictable, and familiar, but it can also begin to feel restrictive. Over time, avoiding the outside world may reduce short-term discomfort while slowly increasing long-term isolation. The same space that once offered comfort can start to feel like a boundary that's difficult to cross. This is why the real question isn't simply whether you stay home, but why. Does staying home restore your energy, calm your nervous system, and leave you feeling more like yourself? Or does the idea of leaving feel so heavy and overwhelming that staying in feels like the only manageable choice? One comes from balance and self-knowledge, the other comes from fear and avoidance. And being able to recognize the difference is important because it helps determine whether solitude is supporting your well-being or quietly limiting it. For people who truly love staying home, they aren't missing out on life. They're simply experiencing it in a different way. Their world may look quieter from the outside, but internally it's often full and meaningful. They tend to find joy in small, familiar rituals: the first cup of coffee in the morning, a favorite spot on the couch, the way the room changes as evening light slowly fades. These moments may seem insignificant to others, but for those who value them, they create a sense of comfort, continuity, and belonging. Psychologists sometimes describe this preference as low stimulation seeking. It means you don't need constant external input or novelty to feel fulfilled. You're not waiting for the world to entertain you. Your inner world already provides enough engagement, reflection, and depth. Time alone doesn't feel empty, it feels spacious. It allows thoughts to settle, emotions to be processed, and attention to move inward without distraction. So if you're someone who turns down invitations without guilt, who feels genuinely content spending time alone, or who prefers familiar comforts over constant change, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not failing at social life, and you're not missing some essential human experience. You're simply honoring what actually works for you. You're not broken, and you're not incomplete. You're wired for depth rather than noise, for presence rather than performance. In a culture that often rewards visibility and constant engagement, choosing a quieter life can look unusual, but unusual doesn't mean unhealthy. So I'm curious, do you personally prefer staying home, or do you think modern culture has made us too comfortable with avoidance? And if you're interested in understanding the psychology most people never hear about themselves, the next video might resonate even more deeply than this one.